What if there was a playground for the worst that society has to offer? Over 10 million users, all confined to a single app, an app full of predators, extortion, security issues, and law enforcement. In 2012, the smartphone established itself as a necessity of the modern era. This quickly led to new and culture-defining applications being released to the market. Snapchat just came out and was an instant success. Apps like Subway Surfer, Tinder, and Clash of Clans were in their infancy. With the start of this new wave of technology came its dark horses. Apps revolving around messaging, social interactions, and anonymity began to rise amongst adolescents. And with this rise in anonymity came one of the worst apps ever created. Whisper was released with mixed reviews, but quickly began to gain a large following. Just 1 year later after its release, in December of 2013, Whisper had amassed over 3 billion page views. Unfortunately, a large portion of these views came from those under the age of 18. You see, part of the reason why this app became so popular was that it offered an anonymous online diary. You could log on and post whatever you wanted. Had a bad day at work? Let it be known. Did something you shouldn't have? Go ahead and tell the world about it. Cheat on your spouse? Hurt someone? Do something disgusting? Post it all. There was virtually no moderation amongst these posts. What was supposed to be an anonymous outlet quickly turned into a cesspool of predators, cybersecurity issues, and doxing. Whisper had such controversial and often intriguing posts, and it's no wonder why millions of people logged on. The app was a shield for those wanting to let it all out, but didn't want the world to know who they were. The cases started to flood in. In 2014, a 27-year-old man posed as a 19-year-old girl and started messaging a 14-year-old boy. After sharing revealing pictures, the victim found out that he was actually talking to a man. Unfortunately, this predator blackmailed the child in what's called sextortion. The child reported to police and the man was arrested and prosecuted. But this was just the beginning. More cases flooded in. Multiple instances of abuse, child exploitation, and extortion. There were cases of school teachers abusing Whisper. Teachers from all across the United States and in varying grade levels were caught in undercover stings using Whisper. But it doesn't stop there. Those in charge of protecting us and our children were also caught using Whisper for illegal activity. A few police officers and firefighters across the nation were caught again in undercover stings for the same reason. Hell, even members of the military were caught using this app to solicit minors. The mask of anonymity brought out the worst of society. Whisper quickly proved that anyone could be a predator. But not only was this app dangerous, it was incredibly invasive. You see, Whisper was popular not only for its anonymity, but also for letting you see posts from those around you. There was a feature where you could allow access to your location, and the app would show Whispers posted nearby. It added mystery and intrigue. Who around you was sharing their secrets? But if you didn't want the app to know where you were, you could simply turn off location services. However, Whisper lied to you. They kept logs of your location, regardless of whether you had location services enabled. You see, in March 2020, researchers discovered that Whisper had left a database containing approximately 900 million user records exposed online, all without password protection. This data included sensitive information, such as user locations, ages, and intimate confessions, undermining the app's core promise of anonymity. Whisper kept a log of everything. But it still gets worse. You see, once this data was released, Whisper marked certain accounts under predatory behavior and given a score from 0 to 100, meaning that Whisper was fully aware of accounts who were using their app for illegal activity involving minors. And over 100,000 accounts were marked as banned for having solicited minors, and another 9,000 other users were given a maximum score of predatory behavior at 100%. However, this still wasn't the only data being leaked. It was alleged that Whisper shared its user data with the Department of Defense and MI5. What was the justification? You see, any reference to self-harm on a military base flagged accounts, and those accounts were reportedly handed over to security agencies. That means regardless of who you were, if you had Whisper installed on your phone while on a military base, your government had backdoor access to your confessions. And who's to say they weren't watching the whole time? With Whisper being the new anonymous social app, it wasn't long before local, state, and federal law enforcement got involved. These agencies would use undercover tactics to lure predators out of hiding and gather enough evidence to arrest them. But there was another issue. Whisper wasn't the only app being used by predators. You see, another popular app, Kik, had already been in the spotlight for years. Kik was infamous for its lack of moderation, encryption features, and appeal to younger users. And like Whisper, arrest after arrest after arrest was made. But what does Kik have to do with any of this? This app has already been covered extensively online. Here's the thing. This isn't just about Kik. It's about a company called MediaLabs. You see, MediaLabs was founded in 2019 and immediately started acquiring major social apps. You see, Kik was on its way out in 2019, but Kik's parent company, Kik Interactive, soon found itself facing a $100 million lawsuit from the Securities and Exchange Commission for allegedly violating U.S. security laws. But then MediaLab stepped in and purchased Kik, claiming they would reduce the spam and keep the app alive. At the same time, MediaLab had its eyes on a separate app. This is when MediaLab bought Whisper as well. But this is concerning because one of the co-founders of Whisper, Michael Hayward, was also a co-founder of MediaLabs. As Whisper continued to operate, the use of the app to catch predators became more and more widespread. I mean, look at this. Apparently, when you tried to talk to someone in the app, it would display a warning stating that law enforcement may be monitoring this conversation. They fully leaned into the fact that their app had become a breeding ground for illegal activity. But this didn't stop the predatory behavior. Whisper still housed some of the most vile content and users the internet had to offer. Arrests tied to Whisper began appearing in mainstream media. Officers conducting John Doe and undercover operations were using the app with great success. But their efforts weren't enough. You see, for every one predator arrested, 10 more seemed to appear in their place. They used this app to spread illegal content and target minors. And it was only getting worse. But before we go further, let's take a step back. You see, during the mid to late 2010s, a new trend emerged across YouTube and social media.
Well, I was actually coming out here to pick up a cupcake.
Hello?
Hello,
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I know you have a gun. Don't do anything stupid. I'm armed too.
He poses as a young girl and tries to catch predators online. Tonight, the state attorney general's office is telling him to stop it.
Massive internet stings began gaining popularity. YouTubers like Mama Max, Dads Against Predators, and POP Squad started filming their own predator catch operations. But their methods sparked intense debate. You see, when vigilantes pose as minors to lure predators, their evidence often doesn't hold up in court. Legally, it's just two adults having a disturbing conversation. In order for the evidence to be admissible in court, the investigator must either be law enforcement or working directly with law enforcement. But with this in mind, I wanted a deeper understanding of how online predatory investigations really work, and how vigilantes help or hinder their investigations. So I sat down with a detective who actively works these types of cases. First off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how long you've been doing this for?
So I have roughly 14 years of experience. It started obviously in patrol, like most people kind of do at the academy. worked a couple years in patrol, and then I was lucky that I got to move to a DEA task force as a task force officer, and that kind of leads up to where I'm at now, where now I've been a investigator, detective, however you want to call it, for the last 3 years now. Currently, I work all of our major crimes, and I'm assigned to the I won't name the agency, but a large internet crimes against children task force that's sponsored by the FBI and Department of Justice. So that's what I've been doing for a little bit now, and really enjoy it.
Now that you're conducting these investigations yourself, how does someone even get on the radar as a potential predator or even investigated by law enforcement?
There's really a couple different ways it could happen, honestly. For example, I remember one as a patrol guy where someone was going through their daughter's TikTok account, and they were like, "There's instant messages on here," and they clicked on there, and there's just all kinds of weirdos in her inbox asking for stuff, and just going about it that way. And so it does actually end up kind of happening sometimes where people do call it in, and cases can start from there. One of the biggest ones that I usually get, though, is typically we get these things called cyber tips, and the federal government made it to where all internet service providers and apps and everything like that, they use the internet. It's actually a federal law that you have to cooperate with law enforcement when it comes to these types of investigations. So most of the time they come through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Most ISPs will actually send like a cyber tip if they're going through something, and they have suspected like CP or anything like that. They'll send it to the NICMEC, and then the NICMEC will actually send it to usually a ICAC task force.
So your ISP provider is the one who actually calls, not calls, but sends law enforcement the tip.
That's typically how it works. It's just like that, where a lot of these big like streaming companies or apps or anyone really that has to do with the internet nowadays, they'll send tips in, and they usually send it to like the FBI, and the FBI will send it out to a task force to wherever they believe it's coming from to investigate.
So whenever you get these cyber tips from the FBI or a federal entity, how many do you think actually come in on a single day?
Man, it's a lot. Like I'll say the task force I'm on is a big metro area here in Texas, and so seeing some of the things and some of the cyber tips and just some of these like partner agencies are working. I mean, I would say there's cyber tips coming in daily. There's probably tons. I would say.
And do y'all even have the manpower to investigate every cyber tip within a reasonable time?
Absolutely not. I love to lie to people and say like, oh, these are, your children are in great hands and they're being investigated to the fullest every day. But man, it's sometimes so overwhelming. I've seen cases to like a cyber tip came in like the prior January, and here it is like the next January, and they're barely getting to investigate it. And so we'll get to it here in a little bit, but just for like cyber evidence and stuff, it's terrible. It's so hard to just try to make cases with some of those sometimes.
Yeah, it seems like no matter how many people you have, there's just too many coming in at once.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's why, honestly, why these task forces that they've set up are so important, because some agencies, there's one guy doing that job. So with some of these task forces, it really helps because, if you are getting overwhelmed or there is a huge case where you're like, man, I'm just stumped and I need some help, then it really does open up the options to have more people coming in to help you.
Now, regarding the cyber tips, I'm sure every app is riddled with predators. But are there any apps that these predators use that specifically stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the main ones I get a lot of is from Kick. Kick is a huge one because it's just it's an easy messaging app that a lot of people utilize, and it just seems like that's been a major one lately.
Really? So, since Whisper and Cake are owned by the same company, I'm sure they follow the same law enforcement response guidelines for subpoenas. But I'm guessing, like, my main question is, do these apps cooperate with law enforcement?
I would say if you want a legal answer, they cooperate. But if they actually cooperate, it's typically hit or miss, to be honest. It's because federally by law they have to cooperate, which is why they do the cyber tips and things of that nature. So I'm not saying, disclaimer, I'm not saying they don't cooperate, because they do. They send in cyber tips. Um, but I will say they make things very difficult sometimes. And, it's like, whenever we try to preserve evidence, like I was telling you earlier, digitally, there's some things like, out, like for instance, just because we're on the topic of Kick, their online policy for anybody is every 30 days they delete your account if it's inactive for 30 days straight. So if I send in some sort of legal process to try to get, legally get my documents and photos or whatever I'm trying to get, if that person's account is deleted in that 30 day period, then all of that evidence is gone. And so you have to work really quickly to try to get it. And there's been a few times to where I've been kind of ran around the pole a little bit with them. So it's like, where by the time I end up sending the legal process, it's already all gone. Everything's, unrecoverable.
One question I'm very curious of is whenever a predator is arrested, is it possible that this one arrest can uncover additional predators? Or is it more of this one's arrested, time to move on to the next?
No, for sure. I mean, I mean, good question. Because honestly, I mean, shoot, even just thinking back right now, I can't think of a single one where it's like, got one, okay, we're done. It's like most of the time, and I'll kind of harp on that, like going back to that other question before about having the manpower is most cases, or not even most. I would honestly venture to say all of them, really, all of them, except for maybe your very rare ones. This stuff though is so hard because it's like, I mean, they use the internet, man. I mean, the internet's unlimited, so every single, guy or girl we've arrested for this stuff, it's like you find, one, two, three, four, five, six, I mean, tens. You just go down the list in some of these chats and you're like, holy crap, there's just so many of them. Then you would start working the case for for those people. And then, where are they getting it from? Okay, well, where's that person getting it from? Okay, and so it's just down the list. I mean, it's sometimes it's a little much where you're like, I can't even, this is one case, now it's led me to 20 other people.
Jesus Christ. So to them, it's just nonchalant. This disgusting crime is just everyday life for them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people that I've seen, I mean, honestly, it's just like another day for them. I mean, to most rational thinking people that I've kind of seen, this is up there with like murder, where they're like, this is an insane crime, but to a lot of these people, it's just like any other day for them. It's like any other internet search.
Now, are there any particular cases that stand out to you or any you'd like to talk about?
I mean, there's obviously it's like trying to single out one or two is just so, they're each one's like equally fucked up. I feel like it's some way or another. You're like, you know, you you see all kinds, but it's just, like we had one recently in this big operation we did. This lady, she's dating a guy who's a registered sex offender because he was convicted of sex crimes against already. She has her own children, and she's totally cool with this. And we were actually investigating him for sending some stuff online. And then after seeing some of the pictures he had sent online, we're like, man, we think he's producing it. Like he's actually making it, not just some dude that, is just sending other files or whatever. He's a producer. So we're like, okay, we got to look at this. So then we find that he's living with her, and we're like, oh man, she's gonna be, um, feeling horrible. Like these are her children. She's gonna feel terrible about this. So then we look into her stuff, and she's sending stuff, and we're like, the hell? And the whole time they're both producing with their own children and sending it out, and they were selling this stuff online. And it's so we ended up arresting. I mean, it was crazy because we end up arresting both of them. So then kids don't have parents anymore, like both parents. They're traumatized because they didn't, from all the stuff obviously that was going on to them. So it was just a messed up situation all the way around. I mean, there was no, at least sometimes, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel where you're like, hey, like no one's gonna hurt these people anymore. But then you look at it and you're like, man, now you don't have parents, now you got to have this, now you got your trauma that you already dealt with. It's just it was just totally fucked up situation.
Unfortunately, this is just a daily occurrence for a lot of these victims, and it's horrible.
Oh, it's wild, man. And the crazy part is like the tips aside, there's always the like the P2P downloads and stuff. I mean, it's like that's just because that's the way we see it, is getting reports from patrol or getting these cyber tips. I mean, so that's just us being reactive, the cyber tips and the reports from patrol. So really like going back on the point where, having a lot of people, it can be a little difficult because you're working these cases as a reactive, person where we're reacting to a cyber tip or a patrol report. Um, so that's, so then we try being proactive, where you have a John Sting or, any of these other stings that we try to get on with these apps, and then you just uncover even more stuff. So it's just it seriously is wild. I don't think people fathom how much this stuff actually is going on.
Oh, I don't doubt. Now, going off to John Sting and without, revealing too much insider law enforcement tactics, do y'all just set up on an app and throw out some bait and see who catches?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, honestly, yeah. I mean, that's with modern technology, it's nice because we there's apps out there where like we'll get like an agent, and there's some of those apps that it makes you can make a picture of a person look way younger than they are, so it's actually like a grown, you know, fully adult agent, and the app makes them look like they're 15, 16 years old. And so there's times where we've rent out a hotel room or something like that, and just post an app on some of these sites that we get a lot of hits on, and just it's really not difficult to get people talking because we call them chat ops. Yeah, these chat ops, we're not trying to get anybody entrapped or anything, like I know a lot of people, they, say online like, "Oh, it's entrapment, you're pretending," but it's really not. I mean, a lot of the times what we do is we just chat with, these people we match with on these apps or whoever, contacts the agent on the app, and it's just normal chatting, and we wait for them to turn it sexual. And so, which, for the most part with a lot of these, people, they're very deviantly, thinking, and so really, it's not hard to get them to start chatting that way. I mean, most of the time, honestly, that's what they first start with is that. So, once they turn it sexual, it's, okay, hey, just let I'm almost 17. I'm not 17 yet or something like that. And once that happens and they say they're good with it, we're like, awesome, come meet up with us. Okay. And then we, then the rest is history on that one.
Now, one thing I consistently see is criticism on law enforcement. People saying they're not doing enough or anything at all for that matter. But it seems like for every predator arrested, there are 10 more that pop up.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's always, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't with a lot of those because, it, there's just so many. And, it's like, I think I saw the other day some online article was saying that the US is actually like the number one producer for child pornography now. It's not even any of these foreign countries that, people used to blame. It's us, it's this country. And so, it's just difficult because, we arrest them, and that's the thing too that a lot of people don't realize is once we arrest them, it's up to the courts, I mean, there's everyone in this country has due process. So, just because we arrest them doesn't mean they're guilty. They still have to go through the whole court process, and that's the thing a lot of people don't realize is this crime is looked at so minorly by a lot of prosecutors and people. It's crazy. Like, so like, very recently, I arrested a guy who's a pretty prominent realtor in the area, had no criminal history, no nothing. And I mean, the guy was in and out of jail before I even was finished with my report. I mean, honestly, it was like I dropped the guy off at jail, and the next day he's already walking free out. Everything's fine. He had like a $1,500 bond. So if anybody knows the court process, you typically you pay 10% of that and you can get out. So $150 and he's free.
I wanted to ask you something that may be a bit decisive on the internet. In the past few years, there's been a huge rise of internet vigilantes. People who conduct their own stings, meet up with alleged predators, and record it and then put it on YouTube. It seems they also pose as children in hopes of catching these predators. And once this video is out, the comments are filled with people saying how the police aren't doing anything. Why can't they just arrest all these predators based on the evidence gathered by the vigilante? And on the surface, it really does seem like, they're doing some good. However, I know behind the scenes there's a lot more that goes on. A lot of the times, this evidence can't be used by law enforcement personnel. Are you able to expand on why this is the case?
It really just to me, especially as a cop, I mean, that has to work their crimes and stuff, it's hard because I feel like they don't what they're not understanding a lot of it is they could be jeopardizing an investigation. Not saying they are, because obviously, there is a lot of people who are under the radar and stuff, but just the mere possibility of, say, like, if I'm investigating the guy that you're now pretty much entrapping to come meet in the public, and now you're telling this guy, "Oh, the cops are here," and he's gonna delete all shreds of evidence to where, I'm hoping, I'm working a warrant on the guy, or I'm working a case trying to get the guy, you know, to get all this evidence. And now whenever I finally get my warrant and I finally go to show up to serve it, there's nothing on his phone because, you guys scared him off to delete everything. So that's just me playing devil's advocate. I mean, I'm not saying that's 100% going to happen, but it's just some of the things that I don't think they think about in some aspects because, their sole intention is they just want to get guys off the streets, which, that's my intention too. But, I see where your heart's at, but I would just, try to let the cops handle it because, they at least are going to make sure that it's done, legally at least. And, like I was saying earlier, where most if not all cases, it typically leads to someone else, or if not more, to where there's chat rooms and everything. And, and a lot of the things too, like I know like Homeland Security, their big thing that they've been doing lately is identifying victims. And so, like they'll use these photos, and they try to use, like with the implementation of AI now, they try to scan photos of the children and actually try to identify them to go and see where they live. Say, hey, you know do they know what's going on? Are they still being a victim of a crime that they don't know about, or or something like that. And so, to me, that's why, like, yeah, just the vigilante thing, it's like, I get it, man, but there's a whole lot of things they don't think about when it comes to that, besides just trying to get someone, you know, on video, doing something and 100% humiliate them. But at the same time, it's like, there's so much more to these investigations that they realize besides just, trying to get them out in public to a patrol cop to say, hey, this guy's got something on his phone.
So, internet vigilantes will always exist. But if you could give them any sort of advice, what would it be?
The only thing I would say is you really got to watch out for asking for some of those pictures and stuff, because you don't realize, like, you might end up on the other side of a warrant that, someone served on the guy that you were just talking to, and now your phone number or your username is now logged under their stuff asking for pictures. Yeah, and that's my main thing to that vigilante thing is, I mean, yeah, you could scoop an investigation, maybe, who knows, but my main thing is just the legality of, like, guys, you could walk into your own trouble. I mean, if I'm if you're posing as, someone, and you're asking for pictures, saying like, hey, send me pictures of, like some or something, and you just want to be like, oh, I got this guy, you're now, yeah, you just asked for it, man, you're now in possession of it. And so if I'm doing a warrant on your phone or on someone else's phone, and I see your name or your username or your, phone number is texting this guy asking for images, and he sent that image to you, you're now getting searched, and you're now probably going to go to jail for possession or manufacture or distribution.
One thing I do want to emphasize on is we are in no way sticking up for these pieces of shit people.
Not at all. I'm just trying to keep people out of trouble, to be honest. It's like I get where they're coming from, and I know their heart's in the right place, but I'm like, man, you don't want to, send the wrong message, or end up in a warrant that you don't even know about until, a couple days later, and then you're going to jail for something.
When Whisper started out, the app had major brand sponsorships. Some shows even promoted Whisper as a way for users to share their secrets. MTV's Virgin Territory was released with Whisper as a promotional platform. Users were encouraged to share their own stories alongside the cast. Fox partnered with Whisper to promote the movie The Secret Life of Pets, introducing video functionality to the app for the first time. At this time in 2016, predators were already known to be using the app. Multiple arrests occurred that same year. Some of the biggest corporations were running ad campaigns directly on Whisper, generating millions of views. And by 2017, Whisper had amassed a staggering 17 billion monthly page views. And this is when things started to go very wrong for them. You see, these companies realized that they had been advertising family-friendly content on a platform teeming with predators, and they pulled all the ads. The app was on the decline. Eventually, it was removed from the Apple Store. The Google Play Store followed suit, removing and reinstating the app several times. And eventually, after years of scandal and degradation, Whisper was abandoned. On the Whisper subreddit, users began posting screenshots of support tickets where Whisper staff confirmed the app was shutting down. And as of today, the Whisper app is still up, but there's nothing left. No posts, no messages, no groups. But the legacy of Whisper still lives on. Several new apps have tried to take its place, hoping to replicate the nostalgia of anonymous confession sharing before it all went wrong. And back on the Whisper subreddit, users still post. Some are looking for alternatives. Others, they're just hoping their beloved app might one day come back.